The Cincinnati Bengals yesterday ended up losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers 32-12, and it really was a game that was won in the second half by the Pittsburgh Steelers. They outscored Cincinnati 24-6. I think I misread the score. It was 34-12, not 32-12. But unfortunately for Cincinnati, there's a lot of things that are technically still on the field issues, but something that really didn't have to do with a play or any scheme, with Jamar Chase having the spitting on Jalen Ramsey incident. And look, this was a game, obviously, coming into it. It's a divisional matchup between two teams who are either trying to stake their claim in the playoff race or, salvage the season a little bit in Cincinnati's case. And you can sense that there's a lot of frustration brewing in Cincinnati. They just put their first round pick, Shamar Stewart, on IR a day or two before this game. That marks the end of a terrible rookie season for a guy coming into his professional career who really didn't have a collegiate resume to begin with. Cincinnati's offense, while they did have a solid showing on the ground, they still just performed very mediocre, and that's maybe keeping it in a positive mindset. There were penalties, there was a pick six, there was only one sack allowed, but still, the two turnovers overall for Cincinnati. And I think the biggest killer is that Cincinnati just this whole game, and for parts of this season, it just hasn't looked smart from Cincinnati. And I don't just attribute it to players. I mean, I think the Jamar Chase and Jalen Ramsey thing, you can attribute that to being a little bit unsmart in the situation, spitting on another guy. We saw Jalen Carter get ejected from the opening night game for that. And while in this situation, if Jamar Chase would have been ejected from the game, I think he wouldn't have really cared considering the score of the game and the situation that they were in. But, Cincinnati just this whole game, offensively, I think Zach Taylor needs to maybe reassess what is going to try to win this team games because they were running the ball very well. Chase Brown had almost 100 yards on the ground on 18 carries. I think there needs to be a little bit more of a devotion to trying to figure out how to run the ball. And I understand that, after Chase Brown yesterday, it was Taj Brooks and Kendall Milton. And you're really not trying to get Chase Brown hurt because if he goes down, the rest of that running back room, it's very light. But you also kind of have to understand the situation. Pittsburgh's not going to let you pass the ball. They're not going to let you get it to Jamar Chase. They're not going to let you get it to T. Higgins. Now, Cincinnati still tried to force it to each of those guys. Jamar Chase had 10 targets. I believe T. Higgins was around that number as well yesterday. And it's just not working. The first drive of the game, Cincinnati scores a touchdown, and you're thinking things are going to go great. They kick the PAT and end up with a penalty on Pittsburgh, and they decide to take points off the board by accepting the penalty. They go for two and don't get it. That's like one of the cardinal sins of football, is you don't take points off of the board. And Cincinnati did it yesterday, and it just, like I said, it was a pretty clear sign of things to come for Cincinnati, that things are just going to look dumb from us today. We're going to take points off the board. We're going to throw a pick six to a guy who was standing basically 20 yards right in front of Joe Flacco, and it was like he was just playing pitch and catch with him. Our star wide receiver is going to spit on the other team's safety. Our tight end is going to fumble the ball and cause another turnover. And it just was time after time. I don't know if it was because Pittsburgh was playing so physical that it got in Cincinnati's head, and they were trying to match it, or they just were pissed off and trying to hit the other guys hard. But the overall point is this just was not a good game from Cincinnati, from a mental mindset, a physical mindset, and it was a clear sign that this team's season is over, I think. Pittsburgh has had issues with teams this year that have really good offenses that could put points up on the board against them, but they shut down Cincinnati yesterday. And Kenneth Gainwell yesterday for Pittsburgh just absolutely dominated. There was the few catches from Darnell Washington. He had 3, I think, yesterday, where it was like he was just doling out punishment. Barrett Carter for the Cincinnati Bengals yesterday had a really tough game. All of the linebackers had a really tough game. And it just was overall a really tough game for the Steelers. For the Bengals, I should say. I don't know why. It was a tough game against the Steelers, is I guess how I could have said that. Cincinnati plays New England next week. I think you can already chalk that up as a loss. I think Cincinnati is just one of these teams now where they need to be playing for the offseason. They need to be playing for a chance to get really good offensive line help, or possibly even better, really good defensive help, because this team just defensively, they can't do it. They can't do it anymore with how they're currently constructed. They can't try to play this game where, offensively we're going to score 35 to 40 points and we're going to have the chance to win late with one defensive stop. They have to be able to consistently rely on that defense. And I know Trey Hendrickson is down, and I know Shamar Stewart is down, and I know other guys are hurt, and I know. But this team was thin coming into the season. And the biggest reason for that is they didn't decide to try to build with more. They tried to just spend as much money as possible to keep Trey Hendrickson happy. And that, to me, was the clear sign before this season even started that Cincinnati was going to be not enjoying a good one. Pittsburgh, next week, they go to Chicago. That's going to be a pretty big matchup, Pittsburgh and Chicago. Both of these teams are first in their division currently, and both of these teams are going to be trying to, stake their claim in their conference. Chicago right now, the only team ahead of them in the conference are the LA Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you're Pittsburgh, you're looking up and it's like Indianapolis, Denver, and New England are the teams ahead of us in terms of seeding. If you just want to look at pure wins, yes, Pittsburgh's behind Buffalo. They're behind the LA Chargers. But Pittsburgh's going to possibly win this division. And one thing that's going to go a long way is winning these games where they're not playing the Ravens yet. Because Ravens fans, they're going to tell you they're right on the heels of Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh better watch out. Overall, I think Pittsburgh, it seems like they didn't lose Aaron Rodgers, and that's not something I talked about in this video because it's still something that's kind of up in the air. Depending on how imaging comes back on his wrist, he might miss the next game against the Bears. He might play. He might be out there with a cast. He might go Terry Bradshaw style. But either way, I think Pittsburgh and Chicago, that's a game I don't really expect Pittsburgh to win, but if they do, I would be very pleasantly surprised. That's going to be today's video. I was going to have a video up yesterday for the Seattle and the Rams game. Probably try to have that up sometime later today. So if you want to see a video about that game, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Make sure you comment. And I'll see you in the next video.